Hey, welcome back everybody. It's me, Chris. I just want to go over a tutorial using Amazon Cognito, which is a great service provided by AWS where your user authentication and registration for your website is actually handled by Cognito itself. Of course, you have to link your website to using this service, but once that's set up, you'll no longer have to worry about storing, user login information into your own database. You don't have to worry about writing code to, encrypt the usernames, hash the passwords into the database, none of that. So before I show you exactly how it works, I'm just going to do a quick demo of a small project that I did already that works. So let me go ahead and show you that. So I have this folder over here called AWS Cognito project. It's very simple. It's really just 3 HTML files, and there's no CSS at all. In actuality, each file just has like a text and a link to log in and to log out. So if I go ahead and run this as a web server, and the way to do that locally on your machine, you could reference this index.html directly on your web browser. But for this demo to properly work, you actually want to install Python onto your machine and then do this command here. Python and then the -m, the http.server. And what this does is that this will run your folder and its contents as if it was in a simple web server. And so it's important to actually run this command in the same folder where your HTML files are at, or more specifically, at least where your index.html file is at. And once you hit enter, you're going to see that it says it's serving the content on HTTP on localhost on port 8000. So if you actually grab this and try to type it into your web browser, you'll see that it brings some HTML here. And this is exactly what's in my index.html file. It has a login and logout. So if I click login, you'll see that I'm brought to this dialog, which is actually the default dialog that AWS Cognito provides. And so I already do have a user account set up here, just playing around. So if I go ahead and just log in, you'll see a couple of things. First, I'm routed to another page and it says logged in. Another thing is that you'll see in the URL here, I'm actually routed to the logged in HTML as well. If you remember before, I was logged into the HTTP 0000 port 8000, and the 0000 is basically localhost. And so aside from that, you'll see that this extension or this URL string over here after the question mark is provided, and that's actually provided by AWS Cognito. So you can specify whether or not it will return a code or a token, and with that you can actually extract the user information. Since the user registration information is in Cognito, you can decode this and extract like the email or the username that they use to log in, and then that way if you have like an e-commerce website, you can link up or associate the user ID with any purchases, and then you can maintain your own database to kind of just link the two together. So you'll see that that's there, and if I want to click on logout, you'll see that I'm routed to another page here where it says successfully logged out, and the URL you can see there just references the logged out HTML page. And if I want to click to log back in, you'll notice that it brings me to this dialog. And one thing I forgot to kind of note the first time I tried to log in is that if you look at this URL here, and we'll go into this a little bit more detail later on, but you'll notice that it references an Amazon Cognito URL over here. It specifies that I'm trying to do a login. It has a client ID that we'll talk about a little bit later. And then there's some other information here, but then you see the redirect URL or URI referencing logged in HTML. So I'll spend a little bit more later. I just wanted you to be aware that this is what Amazon Cognito serves to the URL once you link your website to use Cognito. So now we're going to do, I'm going to kind of show you from scratch or close to scratch I have three basic HTML pages over here that has absolutely like no actual content to be shown to the user, um, except for that one. I guess I forgot to kind of just start from scratch there. And so you'll see I just have an index.html, a loggedin.html, and logged out HTML. So it's the same exact file names as the demo that I just showed you, but I'm just going to kind of do it from, I guess, scratch over here. So what I'm going to do actually is first I'm going to create just a link or an anchor so that the user can select to actually try to log in. So I'm just going to do that briefly here. And once the user is logged in, I'm just going to have a little indication here saying that they are logged in. And I'll give them the option to log out. And then that will actually route the user to this logged out HTML page. And I'll again just give an indication that they successfully logged out. And once again, I'll give them the option to log back in. So right now, it doesn't do anything. There's nothing at all linking this website to Amazon Cognito, and I'll show you right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the web server that I have running on my demo that I showed you. I'm going to go to the other folder that I have where it has those three HTML files that I just showed on NetBeans. And you'll see here I have the same exact HTML file names. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the Python command here to run it on a simple server. Once again, you'll see that it's going to be hosted on this URL. So if I go back to my web browser and just retype that, and let me refresh this because it's still pointing to the other one. You'll see now that it just has a login link, and if I click this, it does nothing because again the code here doesn't link to anything. The href is basically the pound sign, which just brings you to the top of the page. So to have this link with Amazon Cognito, what you're going to have to do is have an AWS account. And what you're going to do actually is once you're logged in, you're going to see this AWS Management Console. You're going to go here and type in Cognito. It's going to bring you to their Amazon Cognito page. Click on User Pools. And you can see here I actually have 3 pools here already. This is just for test applications that I'm working on. But we're going to click on Create User Pool. For the pool name, you can just pick any name. I'm just going to put something like Demo User Pool. It really doesn't matter. And then we're going to go ahead and set up the settings for this user pool. So we're going to click Step Through Settings. And for the most part, I'm going to leave the default options, but there's a few things I will change, and I'll explain to you what they are briefly. So basically, how do you want your end users to sign in? So you can have them sign in using a username, a phone number, email. I prefer using email, so I'm going to go ahead and select this email address and leave this top button actually selected. Everything else I will leave as is. I won't touch anything here, but one thing to note is that you can set the password strength over here. And by default, it's asking for a minimum 8 characters, and it needs to be a mix of numbers, special characters, and upper and lowercase letters. Here, I'm not going to touch anything, but one additional feature that I'm doing on this page, or I should say, one additional feature that this page will do with this default setting is that this here is basically asking how do you want to verify the user. And so what's going to happen is we're going to verify their email, which means when they try to register for the first time, there's going to be a verification code sent to their email that they'll have to use to type into the Amazon Cognito login or registration page after, or to fully get access to the website, or I should say to be fully confirmed to be registered into your website. And I'll show you a little bit more about that as soon as I actually code how this, as soon as I link the website that I have with this user pool after it's finished being created. So this next page, I'm going to leave the default, won't touch anything. I'll just skip through this for now. Create pool. So the pool is successfully created. We still have to do a couple things here. So go back to App Clients, click on Add App Client. And again, you can just, for testing purpose or demo purpose, I'm just going to put like demo test app. You would just preferably name this to something similar to your actual website or your application that you're using. So we're going to do that and click Create App Client. And what's important here is this App Client ID. This is going to be part of the link from your website to Amazon Cognito, so that whenever they click on your login or logout link, it just associates your page to your user pool defined over here. So I'm just going to quickly copy paste this into a comment here on this web page. And next we're going to go to App Client Settings. And here's a few important things that you want to do. This callback and sign out URL, this is important because when you click on once you set up your login link to route to Amazon Cognito to, verify the user authentication or registration, after successfully log in or register, whatever you place here, this callback URL is basically where Cognito is going to route the user. So if your login page was in the index.html, and after they log in, you want to bring them to another page called like the dashboard.html, you would put that URL link in here. And when the user logs out, if you want them to go back to the index.html page, you would put the index.html URL for your website here. So if you have an actual domain name like abc.com, you could put that here. And if you're testing just locally, it's great because you can actually do testing on your local host also. So since I have Python running a web server locally on my machine, I'm just going to reference that URL and do localhost port 8000. And after the user logged in, I'm going to have Amazon Cognito route them to the loggedin.html website. And if you recall, I have a loggedin.html file over here. So for being logged out, I want them to get routed to the logged out HTML page. Oops. And if you recall again, I do have a logged out HTML page here. So click save. A couple things you're going to have to do still. You're going to have to click on domain name here. And basically, this is another part of the URL. Remember how I mentioned there's the app client ID? That app client ID is going to be used in conjunction with this URL here to route the user, or to link your website to the Amazon Cognito user registration authentication page. So you can put any domain here. If you have your own custom domain, you can put your own custom domain. If you're just testing locally, you can just put localhost. Right now, this is not available for me just because, if you recall, I have 3 other user pools, and one of them apparently is using localhost. So if I just go ahead and change it to be localhost 2, the domain is available, save. Okay, so far so good. So if we go to app client settings again, what we actually need, we can't get right at this moment, and we're going to get it very shortly, but we have this hosted UI isn't available. Allow at least one OAuth scope and choose a domain name. So the domain name we already did over here. In domain name we did this localhost2, and then we have the rest of the URL just located there. But for us to actually get what we need to allow, as it says, one OAuth scope. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and just select authorization code grant. And for this purpose, for my demo, to get what I needed to select these 3 options, and I also need to select Cognito User Pool. And so let's hit save. If you noticed, now it says launch hosted UI. So if I go ahead and click that, you'll see that it actually comes up with a default dialog for user registration and login verification. So now you're going to see that it has this URL also. So basically, you're going to want to copy this URL because this is what you'll want to route the user once they click on the login link. So let's copy that 1 second. And let's go back over here. So where we have the login link, we're going to replace that # with that URL. And when the user gets logged out, if you recall, we actually want them to log back in. So we're going to provide that link, and we're going to replace this anchor with that value as well. So now if we go back to our local host, or I should say our website, so I just refresh this, I click login. Notice now it's bringing me to the AWS dialog here for user authentication and registration. So this is the first time this website's been running, so if I try to log in right now, it'll just fail, and rightly so. Incorrect username or password, because I've never registered up to this website before. So you can click on sign up here, and you would just provide the same information, or I should say the information you want for your user login. And you can see here that there's some password requirements, and these correlate to these same parameters in your user pool. If you go to, policies, that correlates to the password string requirements that you have over here with the minimum length and the mix of numbers, special characters, and upper and lowercase letters. So I satisfy all of that here. I'll click sign up. And if you recall, there was that one feature that by default was enabled where we want to send a verification code. So what's going to happen is Amazon Cognito is going to send a verification code to the Gmail that I provided for my registration, and I'm going to go there real quick. Okay, great. You can see here that I have a verification code email just right now. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And before I select, oops, I didn't copy the right thing. Before I select confirm account, one thing I want to show you, if you go back to your user pool and you go to users and groups, here you're going to see the list of all the users signed up or registered into your page. So if you refresh this, you'll see that here's an entry. This is me actually registering right now. I didn't go through the verification code process yet, or at least I didn't confirm it. So you can see that there's an account status and email verified to being unconfirmed and false. However, if I click on this ID here, you'll see that it correlates to the Gmail, or it shows my Gmail account that I used to register. So if I go back, it's still unconfirmed and false. And I come back over here and select confirm account. Couple of things to note. You'll notice that I'm now logged in. I'm routed to a different page here. Notice here that AWS Cognito responded also with this additional information, this code, and this value over here. And if you go back to your user pool over here and you refresh, you'll notice that my account status and email verified changed to confirm and true. So this is good. If I try to click on logout, nothing will happen because I don't have the logout set up on the HTML page, but I can fix that real quick. So if I go back over here, the URL for logging out is very similar to the one to being logged in. There are a few changes, or a couple of changes that you do have to do. So if we go over here, we have the logout link over here. We're going to replace the # with this URL. So one thing that we're going to have to change is that if you notice here after this AmazonCognito.com, there's a login. We're going to indicate that we want to do a logout. We're going to leave the client ID as such because your login and your logout, it's for the same user pool and you have one client ID. What we don't need here for the logout is you don't need the response type, So you can remove that. And you will need to rename this redirect URI. That's only relevant for your login URLs. For logging out, you would change that to logout. And then you would reference the page you want it to go to. So logged out HTML. So now if I come back over here and I refresh and just click logout, you'll see now that I'm successfully logged out. I do have this link over here saying, do you want to go back in? If I click login again, I'm brought back over here and I can try to log in again. And I'm logged in. AWS returns this information, and that's that. So one thing I just want to kind of point out, it's kind of important. In these HTML pages where you actually link this URL, it's very important that the redirect URI and the logout URI matches exactly what you put in Cognito. So if you go back over here and you go to App Client Settings, you'll see that we have this callback and sign out URLs. These URLs here match exactly what is in the logout URI and the redirect URI over here. If I were to change in Amazon Cognito and I put just something else, wrong URL, and do the same thing with this other one, don't have to do it to both, but just I'll go ahead and do it. If I click save, that's there. And if I go back over here and I just kind of start from the beginning again and I click login, you'll see an error was encountered with the requested page. Before it brought us to the authentication registration page, but now there's an error. And you can see in the URL, there's actually a clear indication that there's a redirect mismatch. And again, this means that the URL that we have here to log in doesn't match what's in your user pool profile in Amazon Cognito. So if I go back over here to Amazon Cognito and I just correct it, again, I didn't have to change this logout URL. The same issue would occur if you had the correct login and then you have a mismatch with your logout with what you have in your logout link. You'll have the same issue occur. But I have this corrected now. And what I'm going to do is if I go back to my website, you'll see that now I'm able to get the Amazon Cognito authentication registration page. So that's it. That's it for the demo. I hope it was helpful for anybody over there. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I'll try to build on this in the future. I'm going to try to go back to showing some other aspects of Java and just web development, but just thought that this was useful and wanted to share it. So if you like this, please just hit the like button on this video and don't forget to subscribe to see more content that I put out. Thanks, guys.